glad to have Rav Stav with us tonight, who is the founder of the Tzohar movement, which is challenging boundaries in Israel. And I would now like to hand over to him to talk. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Okay, first of all, good morning to everybody, and I apologize for all the problems and the obstacles we had here. You know, there is an expression in Hebrew that if something has so many obstacles, it means that it has meaning. Because if things are going smoothly, most probably they're not that important. So that's one of the examples, and I think that's one of the challenges that Tzohar was challenged by itself and was challenging the Israeli society. So I will describe briefly what was and what is the mission statement of Tzohar. When were we established? What have been achieved? What is still have to be accomplished? And we haven't achieved yet. But in order to understand the framework in which Tzohar is working and the climate in which Tzohar is working, I want to make a short introduction of what does it mean that Israel is defining itself as a Jewish state. In what sense is it Jewish? Well, the fact that the vast majority of the residents, of the citizens of Israel are Jewish, doesn't make it a Jewish state, because Jews could be a majority in a shtetl in Poland or in Germany, but that still doesn't make the place Jewish. It makes the place that a town or a city or a region where many Jews live there, or even the majority of the residents are Jewish, but that doesn't make the place Jewish. What does it mean that Israel by law is defined as a Jewish state? So basically, Israel was defined, was declared as a Jewish state based on three fundamental laws that define the state of Israel as a Jewish state. A is the law of return, the law that enables every Jew all over the world, whenever he wants, under which circumstances he wants, to make aliyah and to get automatically Israeli citizenship. That's the first bill. The second bill that defines Israel as a Jewish state is the law of marriage and divorce, which means that in Israel, you cannot get married civilly. You have to go to get married through the religion you are associated with, which means that Christians will get married through the church, Muslims through the imam, and Jews through the rabbinate. The third bill that defines Israel as a Jewish state is the law of the holidays, meaning that Shabbat, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, whatever, are officially the official holidays. There is no school, there is no government offices that are open, etc., etc. Now, when the state was established, was declared in 1948, and several months afterwards, these three bills were accepted in the Knesset. Basically, they didn't bother almost nobody, because a country and a society that is busy with issues of security, of unemployment, of cost of living. I guess many of you remember the time of your relatives in Israel that asked you to send them pieces of eggs powder or dried meat or whatever, because here in Israel there was nothing that could be purchased. I guess that in those times, people were not busy with the issue whether they will get married one way or another, especially when the vast majority of the Israelis were coming from traditional homes and they really didn't care how they will get married. And furthermore than that, you had to be really Meshiganer in order to make aliyah and not to be Jewish. Who came to Israel? People that basically were Jewish. Now, when we go deeper to these three laws, we discover in each one of them what a potential of problems it created. And we feel today, and we experience in the last couple of years, the prices of these three bills. Well, Ben-Gurion, for the first bill of the law of return, Ben-Gurion didn't know how to define who is Jewish for the definition of the law of return. So the legend says that he sent a letter to 100 Jewish spiritual leaders all over the world, consulting with them how to define who is Jewish. Now, you can imagine that a typical Jew, even if he's one Jew, he will answer two answers. Imagine you ask 100 leaders who is Jewish and how to define Jewish. You can imagine how many answers you will receive. Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox, Reform, Conservative, Unaffiliated, Reconstructionist, Bundist, whatever, you name it. So he got so many definitions, and he ended up saying, well, with the Jews, I will never get along. I have to come to decide by myself. And the only way that I could do that is relying on the way Hitler was defining Jews. And whoever was Jewish enough for Hitler will be Jewish enough for the Jewish state. And the idea was that since the very basic approach of Judaism was that the state of Israel should be a safe shelter for the Jewish people, whoever who might suffer because of his Jewish identity will get a safe shelter in the state of Israel. And since so many Jews suffered because of their parents or great parents in the Shoah, in the Holocaust, so whoever who for the Nazis were defined as Jewish will be Jewish for us. Now, in the first 2 decades of our existence as a state, nobody cared about this definition because there were very few non-halachic Jewish people that wanted to make Aliyah. But since the Six-Day War, slowly but surely, Jews started to arrive to Israel from all over the place. And especially after the collapse of the former Soviet Union, hundreds of thousands of Jews, actually to be precise, since 1990, we have absorbed in Israel more than 1.6 million immigrants, so primarily from the former Soviet Union. And all of a sudden, the people arrived to Israel not because necessarily they were necessarily halachic Jews. They could be only third or maybe second generation Jewish, but their father or their mother, only the grandfather was Jewish, and that was their excuse to escape from former Soviet Union and to make Aliyah to Israel. This created a problem because all of a sudden, hundreds of thousands of immigrants find themselves in a situation where they want to get married, and in Israel there is only one way to get married, through the rabbinate. All of a sudden they find themselves in a situation where they could not get married in Israel because one of the spouses is not Jewish, the other one is Jewish. That's problem number one. Now let's go to problem number two, to the law of marriages and divorce by itself. In the 50s or the 60s, where people didn't have what to eat, nobody cared who will officiate their wedding. But when you arrive, nobody could dream that he will be able to fly to Cyprus. He didn't have eggs and food and meat to feed his children. He would not fly to Cyprus. But today, to fly to Cyprus and to get married civilly there is much cheaper than to fly to Eilat. To spend 3 days in Eilat cost 3 times more expensive than to fly to Cyprus, to Larnaca, or to Athens, or Saloniki, or elsewhere. And therefore, many Israelis said to themselves, wait a minute, I don't feel any commitment to the fact that my parents decided that I would get married through the rabbinate. I'm secular, I have nothing to do with the rabbinate. And I want to get married in Cyprus or elsewhere. By the way, today, since COVID, Ari mentioned COVID. Since COVID, there is a state in the United States of America named Utah that allows Israelis to register by mail. So many Israelis register as married couples through the mail with the state of Utah. So you don't have to even to fly to Cyprus. You just miss the opportunity of duty-free in Ben Gurion or in Larnaca, but other than that, you're okay with getting married civilly in Cyprus or through Utah, and you get all the incentives of a married couple. So that's the second bill. that all of a sudden many Israelis feel that is coercing, is imposed on them. And the third bill is the bill of the holidays. Now, I just give you one example. A year or 2 years ago, we launched the light train in Tel Aviv. Will it work on Shabbat? Will it not work on Shabbat? Many people that live in Tel Aviv, as you know, I don't know from which communities you come, but I guess any of you that had the experience to live in the city in Manhattan knows that many people there do not have cars. They use the subways during the week. The same thing occurs in Tel Aviv because it's so crowded and the traffic is so horrible. So people use their public transportation. Now Shabbat comes and they say, well, we are not allowed to use this, etc., etc. All these are just examples for the way most of the secular people felt that the state is coercing on them lifestyle and rules or laws of behavior that they didn't like. Now, I jump and arrive to November 4th, 1995, which was the day when Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin was murdered. And this caused the Israeli society to be in trauma. And actually, what we're experiencing today is very similar to the trauma that we experienced towards the end of 1995. And the gap and the tension, and almost to say the rift between right and left, but to be more precise, it's not between right and left, it's between observant and non-observant people, because the leading force of the right were the observant people, and the rift between observant and non-observant arrived to levels that it wasn't far from a civil war between these two forces, just like what happened prior to October 7th in 2023. I was then a young rabbi, almost 35 years old, and a rabbi of a small village near Ashdod. And we gathered a group of modern Orthodox rabbis, and we asked ourselves, what can we do in order to soften a bit the tension that exists between these groups, and in order not to solve all the problems of the Israeli society, but at least to try to to make the angles a bit softer, not as sharp as they are. So we started a project called, first of all, we established an organization named Tzohar. Tzohar in Hebrew has two meanings. It's a window. It's a window between worlds, between the observant and the non-observant world. And it has also a second meaning, to be a good stone that is shining, that is giving light, that is a source of light. You know, when Noah was told to build the ark, when he was told that the humanity and the world is going to have a big flood, he was asked to build the ark, and he was told to make a tzohar. And the question is, and there are two interpretations for the word tzohar. Is it a window outside, or is it a good stone that will light inside? And we believed that this is our mission. And we started with a small project that we felt that is very important for the Israeli society. And actually, we thought that we touched a small issue, and all of a sudden we discovered that a whole Pandora box was opened. And we started with a project which was very, very modest, just to help young couples to get married. What does it mean to help young couples to get married? Unlike America, when every couple wants to get married, even if he's not observant, he knows the way to his community rabbi. It could be Orthodox or conservative or Reform. He's connected in one way or another. If he's not connected, he will go to civil marriage. But if he wants to get married in a Jewish way, he knows the way to the rabbi. In Israel, that's not the case. If you are not observant, you have no connection to the rabbis. The rabbis are the state rabbis. and nobody knows who they are, and nobody's connected to them. So therefore, we started the project saying, well, we will be your rabbis. Feel free if you want to get married, call us. And since then, the telephone did not stop ringing. Actually, we are performing every year in the last 2 or 3 years above 5,000 marriages, which means it's about 1/3 of the secular marriages in Israel. And we could increase our numbers. We are not dedicating that effort. We're not publishing, we're not advertising ourselves, because we know that it goes from word to mouth. So that was the beginning of our activities. But then we discovered that one of the most important issues is to help people that come from abroad, whether it's from the United States of America, which is about 500 cases a year, or it's from the former Soviet Union, which is above 4,000 cases a year. They need to prove that they are Jewish in order to get married in Israel. Now, people could argue whether the system is right, whether it's wrong, whether there should be other ways of getting married in Israel. We are not politicians. We have no solution in this area. We know to help people, and our aim is to help people and to connect them to what they believe that they are engaged to, which is Judaism. And once people come to us and say we're Jewish, we feel our commitment to help them to prove that they are Jews. So if somebody comes, for instance, if he comes from the conservative or reform congregation in America, he will come to the rabbinic court in Israel or to the rabbinate in Israel and will say, well, my parents belong to the conservative congregation in Palo Alto, so they will tell him, well, go and prove that you are Jewish. By the way, if you will say that he comes from an Orthodox community, he will also be told that he has to prove it, that he's Jewish. But unlike Orthodox communities, that the rabbi most probably is recognized by the Chief Rabbinate, once the local rabbi in Palo Alto or in Los Angeles will write a letter, I know this family and they are Jewish, it will be accepted. If a reform or conservative rabbi will write this letter, it will not be accepted. So then the boy or the girl are stuck. They will come to us. And they will come to us and we will help them to prove that they are halachic Jewish in order to enable them to get married in Israel. Now, this is relatively easy. Imagine if you come from the former Soviet Union and where they lived under the communist regime for almost 80, 90 years, and there was not a rabbinic world there, and nobody could approve them that they are Jewish or not. Here, our job is 10 times more difficult. And so we dedicated a whole project called Shorashim, meaning in Hebrew, in English, it's called roots, which the idea, the aim, the target of this department in Tzohar is to help every immigrant that maintains that he is Jewish, to help him to prove that he is Jewish. Today, the rabbinate demands from every immigrant that arrived to Israel after 1990 to prove, to go through this process, and actually we are there to help him. This was actually our beginning, and since then we keep on growing every year with new other projects. I mean, today people that want to celebrate bar mitzvah through us, or want to need our assistance in kashrut or assistance in funerals because they don't like the rabbinate. They want women to say eulogies, or they want different issues that the rabbinate will not allow them. Things that we believe that are within the boundaries of the halacha. We will be there to help. And actually we became I would say, the ultimate address for, I guess, the vast majority of the secular society in Israel that wants to be engaged to Jewish values and to Judaism, and doesn't find its way, and doesn't like the approach of the religious establishment, or in its literal name, the Chief Rabbinate. They will turn to us, and usually they will get our assistance. So we became actually the rabbis of the secular society in Israel, and we are very proud to be a part of this mission. So now I could talk about Tzohar for another 20 minutes, Gila. But I believe that I would like to, that it would be better off if we make a kind of interaction between ourselves, and I give you the option to raise questions, and I will try to answer them and to have a dialogue. But if you want me to continue, I could continue for hours. So just tell me how to run it, how to handle it.
Sure. Well, I have a few questions that people have asked, and maybe I can ask those questions and you can use it as a jumping off point to then talk more about Zohar. So, what has been the most challenging thing that you have encountered so far going up against the rabbinate?
Look, there were two major issues that we went against the rabbinate. One is the issue of kashrut, because actually it's a whole industry. And actually what gives the rabbinate the power is the law that says that the chief rabbinate is the only authority that is authorized by law to use the word kasher. And when we opened our kashrut system, we were not allowed to use this word, which causes a lot of problems. We have to use sophisticated terminologies like it's supervised, it's under our responsibility. You use the word in just to make the idea clear, but not using the word kasher. It is challenging, and sometimes we have problems because, for instance, hotel wants to host officers from the police or from the firefighters or from the army, and a part of the tender is that they have to be kosher. But once they get our supervision, they are not allowed to use the word kosher. So because of that, they will lose a lot of tenders. So it's a problem. That's the biggest challenge. The second biggest challenge was the weddings, because they didn't like what we were doing, because we created a recompetition. So they started to put restrictions on us. For instance, they created a whole list of criterias that who is authorized to perform a wedding in Israel. And coincidentally, 90% of the Tzohar rabbis fell into the categories that could not perform weddings in Israel. So we had to fight against it. Baruch Hashem, today there is no attempt to fight against us. Everybody understands that the project of marriage is so important for the state of Israel, and nobody tries to challenge it.
Thank you. Now something slightly more contentious, also on the concept of marriage. Does Zohar at all address same-sex marriage?
No, we are committed to the Orthodox approach in halacha, and we don't officiate same-sex marriages. If we will not exclude same-sex marriages or couples from the community, but we will not perform their weddings.
Okay. So I actually attended the Zohar conference earlier this year, and it's amazing to see how many thousands of people came. Where do you envisage Zohar in 10 years' time or 20 years' time? What is your future plans to branch out into new projects?
So we have many new projects. I mean, every year we don't stay and having fun and enjoying what has been achieved. Our mission is actually to create a common Jewish denominator that will be the basis of the vision of the Jewish society in Israel. We know that there are several forces in the state of Israel that will never agree upon everything, and we don't want them to agree. Our diversity is a part of our strength, and we don't have any problem with that. But having said that, we believe that people have to feel more connected to our common values. And our mission is to create the curriculum that will gather all the forces that agreed upon the vision of how should a Jewish society look like in the 21st century, I think that this is the vision. How do we try to accomplish that? We established recently an internet channel called Mashav, which means spirit, new wind. The idea is that we want to bring a new spirit to the Israeli society by providing more and more inclusive Jewish contents and Zionist contents that will cause many Israelis, doesn't matter whether they are observant or not observant, to feel connected. So that's one leg of our strategic vision. Second leg is to publish a weekly Shabbos weekly portion sheet paper that will be distributed all over the country in order to expose the religious and traditional people to the rabbinic voice of Tzohar that we believe that should be the voice that the Israeli society will be exposed and will be accessed to.
Thank you. Those all sound like amazing projects. So Tzohar is not a project of the state. So then where does the funding come from? And how can people in America be involved in Tzohar?
So I will tell you in 2 or 3 levels. One level, first of all, I want you to know that Tzohar is funded mostly 90% by donors, and what's very, very special about Tzohar that above 60% of the budget, of the annual budget, which is around $12.5 million, more than 60% of that is raised in Israel, not overseas. For non-profit organization, it's very seldom, very rare, and we are very proud of that because it shows the trust and the confidence that the Israeli society has in what Tzohar is doing. By the way, we get donations from observant and non-observant. Our biggest donors in Israel and not in Israel are non-observant people. So we are very privileged in that. I think that American Jewry could help us in 2 or 3 levels. The financial support is one thing which is important, but that's not the only way to help us. I think that the idea that we try to spread all over the country is an idea that should be spread in the American Jewish society as well, in the American Jewry as well. And therefore, we would love to share our ideas, to share what we are doing in Israel, to share with the American Jewish world. And a part of what we are doing now is a part of our mission. And we are very happy to come and to talk and to speak about ideas and issues. What I've described here now in the last 30 minutes was very brief and very short, and we didn't go into the depth of so many issues that divide the Israeli society today. So there is a lot to talk and there is a lot to discuss about. And we will be more than happy to share these ideas with American Jewish communities. Doesn't matter to which denomination they belong to.
Thank you. Would you be able to share with us a personal story that inspires you to keep on going with this organization?
I could tell you actually hundreds of stories, but I want to share with you one story that I believe that for us in Tzohar, maybe that's the one of the peak moment that you say to yourself, wow, for that moment, Tzohar, the entire story of Tzohar is worth it. And the story is the following. A boy comes to us and is telling us, he comes with his mother. They made Aliyah from Ukraine a few years ago. They came to our offices saying, we are Jewish, but we have a problem to prove it. Why? Because the mother was raised in a Christian family. And when she had to explain to the rabbis in Israel, why was she raised in a Christian family, she came with the following story. Listen to that story. I was a young girl, 5, 6 years old. My mom was a Jewish girl. She got married to a Ukrainian Christian boy. And when the Nazis arrived to our village, they took my mother and myself, and they gathered us with all the Jews, and we were marching actually towards the forest, just like the very famous story of Babi Yar. And they were marching, and we were marching. And then my mother, which was very wise and very courageous, she says to me, in the first opportunity you see that the soldier is not looking to us, take the opportunity, take the advantage, and run away to your father, tell him where I'm taken to, and you tell him that he should put his eye on you. And the girl runs to her father, and the father takes his daughter to his parents, which were Christians, and he tells them, please put your eye on my daughter. I cannot let my wife to die alone. I will escort her to the forest and we will die together. And that's exactly what happened. I was raised by my grandparents that were Christians. And when I arrived to the age of 18, my grandparents told me that I'm halachically Jewish. And I decided, then I got married, my husband passed away, and we had one child, and I decided that I want to make Aliyah. She came with this story to the rabbinic court. And the rabbinic court said, wow, it's an amazing story. It's a fantastic story. But who says that the story is true? There is no document that could confirm, that could approve that the story is true. And they didn't trust her. They arrived to our office. We sent our representative that lives in Ukraine to that village. We told him, you don't come back without an answer that approves that story. He sat there for more than 2 weeks, didn't find nothing. In the last day, before he decides to leave, he goes to a library. He starts opening coincidentally the papers of that town from 1946, 1947, 1948, and then all of a sudden, he discovers the story with the names of the grandparents, of the woman, of the girl, of the husband. He sends the article to the rabbinic court in Jerusalem, and they approve right away the story is true. And I remember myself asking the guy, we're sitting in an evening with a few donors of Tzohar, and I asked him, why was it important for you to prove that you are Jewish? And he says the following. Look, most of my friends would not go through this process. But since I grew up and I heard the story from my mother, I decided I have to take revenge on these Nazis. But how will I take revenge? I will kill a Nazi? That's not my way. That's not my lifestyle. I will make sure that the Jewish continuity will not stop by me. I will make sure that my revenge in the Nazis will be that I will continue the Jewish dynasty and the Jewish story. So I decided to get married in a Jewish way and to prove that I'm Jewish. And that's what I've done. And that's the exciting moment that actually we have almost on a daily basis with tens of people every day. As I told you, we helped more than 4,000 former Soviet Union Jews, 500 North American and 500 South American Jews every year. And I just put a finger on one big project. I could share with you hundreds of stories. Last week I was in Zurich and in Amsterdam. Everywhere where I arrive, my brother got married through you. Without you, he would never get married. And so many stories. And each one of the people that I meet says, well, I must thank you because this is what you do. And that's true. Our mission, we are devoted for the unity of the Jewish people and for the continuity of the Jewish people. And that's exactly our mission. That's what we stand for, and that's what we are fighting for.
It's very inspiring. Thank you. Do you feel that you are in the minority fighting an uphill battle, or do you think that the Haredi community is the minority? how do you feel that you are being received by Israeli society at large?
Look, I believe, and we check it by polls every year. The vast majority of this Israeli society sees us as heroes. For certain groups, by the way, not all of the Haredi groups, for certain groups in the Haredi world, we are the enemy. But I wouldn't even say that for most of them. It depends. I believe I could share with you an anecdote from yesterday morning. A Haredi rabbi calls me and he says to me, please help me out with this and this conversion because my son started to date with a non-Jewish girl and she wants to convert. Please help me out. So when they have a problem, they know that we are the address that the kids that sometimes went off the derech, went off the way, or not as Haredi as their parents are, they know that we are the answer for them. So I believe that deep in the heart, even in the Haredi world, we represent the rational voice that they know that they want to be connected with, and they know when to call us.
Thank you. That's like really, I think that's an important function, that you're an address for people to come to and that the Israeli society knows. Do you said that you were in Amsterdam. Do you have plans of making Zohar international? Is Zohar international already? Can you comment on the global reach?
I don't want to say not Tzohar International, although we once had thoughts about that. But one of the advices that we received and we try to obey to good advices and good recommendations, keep your hands out from internal American politics. So we try to obey to these recommendations and we don't try to compete with no organization in America. But since we come quite often to the States, I could tell you personally, I am supposed to be towards the third week of December in Los Angeles, and then afterwards in Florida towards the middle of January, and a few months later in Boston and Philadelphia. So since we come quite often to the States, so we are very deeply connected to American congregations and to American rabbis, and we have very good relationship with the American communities.
Thank you. Do you also deal with burials? Because we know that now with the war,
especially after October 7th, but even before, we escort primarily secular families that feel that the establishment of the funerals, the Chevra Kadisha, the way it functions, is not respecting enough, is not fitting to the values. So we are officiating funerals, hundreds every year. It's not as big, as large as the weddings project, but we officiate hundreds of funerals every year.
And does that also cover if there's an issue of the question of their religion with the burial?
Usually, if somebody is questioned, he will not turn to us. But many times, I'll give you the typical example. Suppose a man wants to be buried next to his wife, but his wife is not Jewish, and she was buried in a civil cemetery. He wants to be buried in a civil cemetery next to his wife, but he's Jewish and he wants to have a Jewish funeral, but the rabbinic establishment will not officiate that funeral. He will turn to us, and this could happen quite often. That's only one of the examples. Could give you another example. In the religious establishment in Israel doesn't allow to be buried in boxes in Israel, and unlike America. And there are many secular people that want to be buried in a box, and we will allow that. So the only way to do this will be in a civil cemetery, and we will officiate that funeral, etc., etc.
I know that you are the head Rav of Shoham. So do you have a synagogue that you run services from? Does Tzohar have a prayer service that they recommend? Are there Tzohar specific synagogues in Israel?
No, and we insist that it will not. We accept all synagogues, and we have hundreds of rabbis that serve in so many synagogues, and it's not called the Tzohar synagogue. But naturally, there are synagogues that feel closer to us, and there are who feel less closer to us. I would say that in Shoham, I run 18 shuls in my community. I try not to distinguish between them and not to discriminate between them, and I feel comfortable in each one of them. Can I ask that this will be the last question? Whatever you ask, because I've already.
Sure. I guess, do you think that Tzohar's success is attributed to the fact that you stay out of politics?
I think that's a part of the success. We are very extreme in that. We are not political. We have connections with all parties from the right and from the left. And we insist not to become a part of the political game in Israel, which naturally will make us a part of the dirty, poisoned climate in the Israeli politics, and we want to keep our hands off from that.
And so what else has contributed to the success? Sorry, that's just piggybacking.
Okay, I believe that we responded to a need. There was a need to what we're doing. And B, the fact that our rabbis are a part of society. They go to the army, they go to work, they're not excluding themselves from the responsibility and solidarity of the rest of the society. Just for example, in this recent war, 2 of our rabbis were killed. The latest one was Rabbi Avi Goldberg, a father of 8 children. Tzohar rabbi. A few days before him, Rav Hariv with 6 children, 3 guides of Bar Mitzvah program. 1 was father of 6 children. I mean, people appreciate the people that are volunteering by us, and I think this is a part. And by the way, I didn't mention the amazing contribution of the women in Tzohar. We have more than 500 women that are giving the Kali classes through for the marriage process, and they are contributing a lot to our amazing image in Israel.
Do they also deal with agunot?
We have that's already after the last question. We have a prenuptial agreement that intends to prevent issues of agunot, but this requires a whole different discussion. Okay. And I'm apologizing from the very, very distinguished group that I have to say goodbye and shalom, and I'm looking forward for the next opportunity to talk to you, and maybe in one of our upcoming visits to see you in face.
Thank you so much for your time.
Shalom, shalom.
We really appreciate, despite all of the technical difficulties, that this was able to happen. Very important.
If not for your stubbornty, I wouldn't believe that it would happen, because I already was desperate. So you discovered your leadership and insisting to make it happen. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you to you, and we hope to have you here back again.
Shalom,
Thank you to everybody for joining us. Thank you for listening. Upcoming CSP programs this Thursday with Professor Mark Michael Epstein is part 4 of his series of the images of the Jews in art, and that will be focusing on Jesus. And look out in your email inboxes. On Friday mornings, we're now sending a new weekly update for the following week with all sorts of interesting bits of information. So feel free to stay in touch with us. Thank you for all your patience tonight, and you will no doubt receive this recording later. So if the sound was iffy, you'll be able to hear it again. Thank you for your patience. Thank you so much. And I'll see you in another program soon. Bye for now.